How many state level staff do we have in the room? All right, what about district? Perfect. What about school-based? Great. Roles, so support staff, social workers, psychs, behavior specialists. All right, what about administrators, school-based administrators? Teachers? Great. Nice mix in the room. I love seeing that. I love seeing that the school-based staff are able to get out and go to a conference. How many of you are from Illinois? Anybody from the Quad Cities? Well, that's where I'm from. Well, welcome, and we'll get started. These are some of the kind of stage setting slides we wanted to include. So as you are going through, just kind of be sure and remind yourself to ask you these big, important questions. Where are you with implementing this? What do you hope to learn? What did I learn? And what will I do with what I learned? Also thinking about where you're at with the implementation change process. So thinking about, are you guys just exploring this idea? Have you gotten started and need to make some tweaks? Or are you really trying to institutionalize it into your system? So like I said, we're going to be quickly going over the FLPBIS project process for supporting equitable discipline in our school districts. And that's going to be kind of quick. We're going to go over a problem-solving process, but if you have questions about that, feel free to stop us. We're going to leave most of the time for Cynthia to share her perspective.
All right. So we like to share this little graphic. I'm sure some of you have seen it over the past couple years. Basically what we're seeing here first is that all of these people have equality. They're given equality to what they're trying to see here. Here, we're giving them equitable support. So we're giving them enough supports, each of them, to get to where they need to be. But really what we're trying to do at the end of the day is remove all of those barriers so everyone has equal access, right? Equal and equitable. So with our support, our process at PBIS in Florida, we do a we do, you do, and then a collaborative. And this little graphic kind of really takes you through our full process. So we start with making sure that you have a strong leadership foundation there. So our prereqs really aren't any different from your tier 1, your framework. So we have our leadership, that full commitment to forming relationships. The other thing I really like to point out is to make sure that the people on your team are passionate about this work. Because if you don't care about this work, it's not going to get done, right? We got to have people that want to do this, that want to see the changes. It's got to be person-centered, strength-based, people that are aware of what's already going on, so that structural racism, perceived biases, you got to have all of that knowledge as well. Data system, where are my data geeks in here? I know I am. Awesome. So you want to have a good data system in place for problem solving. Okay, and again, that tier 1, got to have tier 1 in place. All right, and then we go through the problem-solving process, looking through our data. So looking at our problem ID, what is the problem? All right, so drilling down into our data, looking at where those problem behaviors are occurring, when they're occurring, what the actual problem behaviors are. All right, and then we move into the part that we're most excited about. So gaining our staff perspective, student perspective, and, staff, student, and family perspective. All right, and taking that information and linking it to evidence-based practices and interventions. Evaluating those ideas, using our stakeholder voice to develop ideas, supporting our plans, and then evaluating whether or not it's working. All right, so our problem-solving process, we start with problem ID, figuring out why that problem is occurring. And this is the part that a lot of people skip the most. We want to figure out what the problem is and then skip right to an intervention, right? Give me the strategies, give me the ideas. I want to get in there and do something now. But we really need to figure out what the problem is before we can keep going, right? And why it's occurring. And then we can design our intervention plan and evaluate whether or not it's working.
So this was generally our scope and sequence for our curriculum. Going through, and I don't know if I said this in the beginning, but mostly all, I can't think of anything that's not, is available to you. So if there's anything you see that you would like access to, we can definitely provide that. Our website's on the last slide, and a lot of it's posted there as well. So if we have time at the end and you have questions about things, I can pull that up and show you. So we created, mostly Tracy Nemirsky, so if you see her around, give her a shout out. Created an equity profile, problem definition template, and some resources to summarize the data. What's awesome about that is you plug in your discipline data, and it gives you your referral ratio, risk ratio, a lot of complicated metrics for equity, and at the bottom it gives you a statement for how to interpret that, because those can be very confusing. Is this one thing focused on the number of kids or number of referrals? Is it including or excluding repeat offenders, things like that? That's an awesome resource if you would, if your data system isn't quite that savvy. So sharing the data, making sense of the results, and validating ideas was probably the area that, as Rebecca mentioned, schools wanted to skip the most. But was also the most powerful step in creating change, quick change, in terms of perceptions, beliefs about what the problem is, where to focus the intervention, and how to solve it. And then we went into helping them based on their hypotheses and prediction statements for step 2 in problem analysis. What interventions are you going to implement? How are you going to monitor fidelity of those and monitor progress? And those are still areas that are definitely a work in progress for a lot of our schools. That's the equity profile. This one, and at the bottom you can see for each subgroup and each metric, it gives you a written statement. So you're not wondering, am I interpreting this correctly? It's all right there for you. The problem definition template allows schools to easily see, are the patterns for discipline different for my target group than for all other groups? Or is it the same? So it looks and compares by location, by time of day, by administrative response or consequence, things like that. So step 2. A lot of times when we do why is the problem occurring, when we answer that question, we get input or talk amongst educators. And based on that one perspective, go forward in implementing an intervention. And we really emphasized, and in fact, the ESC director in Hernando County required all the schools going through this process to do family focus groups as part of this process. And that was huge, because at first, if it was optional, it would have been skipped. Because it is challenging, and it did require, I guess, additional time, energy, go out of your way, and we're gonna go over kind of all those steps. But it's easier, you have access to your staffs right there during the day. They also required student focus groups. So we're gonna share with you that experience of doing focus groups with elementary, middle, and high school kids, and sharing with them the data and asking them why they think it's happening and their ideas for solving it, which one of my most favorite and most powerful ideas came from a high school in Hernando. And then the community. So where we could, we encourage schools to think about who in the community has good relationships with your target subgroup. So the target subgroup identified in step 1 as the subgroup in your building that's experiencing disproportionate discipline. And I'd say the majority, 90% of schools that we're supporting identified Black African American students as the subgroup that was experiencing disproportionate discipline. So for this, we would ask schools, who in the community has good relationships with Black African American students and families in your community? There was a district that included a lot of religious leaders in the community who also did a lot of, I would say, kind of like community-based interventions and supports for kids. Maybe that's mentoring or clubs before and after school. So those people were brought into the process as well. So then once they had what we did, our supports were basically coming and facilitating the focus groups and transcribing, generally word for word, what was said during the focus groups, and then giving that back to the schools. So if you don't have a state level PBIS center that's working with your district or supporting your schools, think about who you might be able to work with within your system. So is there someone at the district level that could come help facilitate this? Or how might you use your school psychologist, social worker, things like that to help with that process? So we kind of fed those transcripts back and said, what's common across all the stakeholders? Is there something that your students are saying, that your families are saying, and your staff agree on as to why the problem is occurring? That's probably a good place to start. You have consensus that that's an area of need. And they would decide on those broad themes based on the care domains. So again, tree stand and mirror C on our project. Took all of the research and guidance from the feds when it came out in 2014 and organized it under these broad domains, which I like the acronym. Sorry, I'll move my hair. So generally the recommended interventions, there's a lot of limited research in this area, but what's recommended, what does have some evidence, falls under curriculum instruction awareness, and that includes your own biases, cultural responsiveness, and how those two interact, relationships with others, environmental factors, as well as discipline policies. And I will say that every single school we've worked with, at least maybe with me and these two, have focused on relationships. That is the domain that has come up and been the initial area of focus for this work. So once you have your domain, then you kind of dig a little deeper. So what is it about relationships that isn't working? What strategies are you currently doing that aren't effective? So that's that root cause, digging a little bit deeper. What evidence do you have to support that? And then going forward to think about how to address that, linked to your analysis. And then developing an action plan around that and being very concrete with this. So there's a place in here, if you're going to be implementing a mentoring strategy, how are you monitoring fidelity? Who's doing it? When are you doing it? When are you going to come back together and look at the data? And I'd say that that's a piece that wasn't valued at first for a lot of our schools. Then later, once we came back to step 4 and said, how did it work? And we asked for the data. How many times did you mentor? What students did you mentor? That's when they were like, oh, we wish we would have collected that fidelity data. So if anybody has any secrets to getting buy-in for collecting data up front rather than after the fact, let us know. And then progress. So how did it impact students? What changed? And making those decisions. So our support process was really starting with the why. And at first, I'm a huge family engagement advocate, and I think Rebecca will tell you, when we were supporting our schools to do this and the notion of we're going to do focus groups, the reaction from schools was kind of like shock. I think there was some fear. There was hesitancy, but it came across as, how do we do this? So that's something, a lesson learned, I guess, from our perspective. I was like, what do you mean they don't know how to call their parents? Yes, they do. So I think we need help. We're not sure how to do this. We need some support. We don't know who to invite. We don't know when to do these. We don't know what questions to ask. Those kinds of things were, I think, a lack of buy-in at first, or a lack of understanding how it was going to benefit the process rather than hurt it. So there was a lot of feeling, not stated explicitly. So actually, one principal did, but was like, why are we going to just bring attention to this problem among our families and communities? And every single time, I don't know of a negative instance, so I shouldn't say every single time, it's pretty absolute, but of all the ones that I was participating in and supporting, every family was thankful to be invited, was appreciative that the problem was acknowledged and is being addressed. So I can tell you that from the Black African American families that we've worked with, they all kind of said it's not a surprise to us. We know that this problem exists. We live it every day. So thank you for acknowledging it and for working with us to solve it. And I think that was a lesson learned, again, after the fact. Our schools didn't expect that. They were kind of like, well, let's just fix it and hope it goes away and gets better before it gets on the news or we get sued. So again, acknowledging it, being reaching out to the community and bringing them in that problem-solving process, I think restored a lot of broken relationships too, and earned the school staff a lot of respect on behalf of the families and community. So the why, you can point to the research. It is important. One of my favorite slogans that I don't know where I picked it up, one of the family engagement conferences, was nothing to us or for us without us. So if you're going to be planning an intervention for a target subgroup, include them in that planning, problem-solving process. So we have a lot of research citations to support that fact, and if you would like those, we can send them. Okay, so this was the planning support that was developed to really help give them steps for how to go about planning this process. First was the sampling frame. You are asking families of your target subgroup. 90% of the schools, it was Black African American families. And I can say that that was kind of like a light bulb moment for some of our schools as well. So that's the first piece there, is where you indicate your demographic group. And then you think about what students are in that group. And you want your students that you're thinking about to fit the demographic group, but also represent a range of experiences in your building. General ed, special ed, a lot of disciplines, no disciplines. A lot of school involvement, activities, extracurriculars, none. So you're not getting one kind of perspective, but you're getting a range from a lot of different students in that building from their various experiences. And then based on those students, thinking about their families. So families meaning somebody that that student has a good relationship with and is supporting their educational process. Could be their parents, could be their guardian, it could be an aunt, uncle, could be a grandparent. Who in the building has a good relationship with that family? There might not be anybody on that team. Might be a coach, might be the social worker. It might be somebody that you don't always go to involve in this process as well, even on the educator side. So thinking about who has a good relationship with that family and having that person make that personal outreach to the family to invite them, to explain the process. And that initial contact, we had to go over as well. So thinking about, giving them a script, giving them some talking points to bring up during that conversation, making sure that they're clear about why families are being asked to be included in this process. So we value your input. We would like your help in solving this problem. The logistics was often communicated as the barrier, right? So, well, when do we hold these? Well, we ask parents. So in those initial phone calls, you ask, that's when you do your needs assessment, right? So are you interested in being a part of this? We would like your voice. What do you think? And then when can you join us in the focus group? So you kind of do that planning session. This document, if you want it, is available to you. It didn't all fit on the screen. But the next section is kind of getting each parent's days of the week, times, and then thinking about what are their barriers to getting physically in the building. Logistics. So do they need a ride? Do they need childcare? One of my favorite ways to ask that question is, what can we do to help you get here? So that also includes things like food. Would it be better if there was food? I'll come if there's not, but it'd be better if there was. So that way you can kind of work on most immediate needs and then work on the more fun things to encourage participation and thank them while they're there afterward. And then their comfort level. So whoever has a good relationship with that family during that conversation, it would, if they're not on the team, asking, would it be helpful for you if I was there with you? Is there somebody else? Here's the team, or here's who will be there. Are you okay kind of walking in the building, walking in the room by yourself? So offering those supports and to make sure that they're comfortable during that process. Then you have to contact and reach out to those parents again, right? So you kind of did your needs assessment for your parents, and then you're calling to confirm. This was a date and time that generally worked for everybody. Sometimes when you call the parents back, initially, that you're calling a parent that initially said they couldn't make it, they changed their schedule to make it. We had a parent who was living in a domestic violence shelter who came to she was the only parent that came to the focus group that night. And she was like, I'm so glad that this problem is being addressed. And I did everything I could to make sure I was here to provide my input and my voice. See, it makes you a little emotional, right? It's very cool. So then we did student focus groups, and these were fun. Also easier to plan because kids are there, generally. But you want to make sure that you're encouraging the school teams to, again, identify students in the demographic target subgroup, but making sure that they're getting a range of student experiences. So same thing. A lot of times it worked out that the parents and students that were on that initial planning form were invited. But if you want to invite more students because you have more access to them within the building, it's easier. That worked out as well at times. Making sure that you're following the district and school policies, making sure kids know it's voluntary, and making sure that you're going over confidentiality, the Vegas rule. At times, kids aren't often asked their input in solving a problem, and they were surprised, I think, at times when we were explicit with them and saying, these are the data for the nation and the school, what do you think? And so sometimes leaving that group, there was murmurings, in student conversations elsewhere. So making sure you're just talking with them ahead of time. We are valuing your input, but not everybody's going to be involved in this and have the full explanation either. So just have some caution with that. Anything else? You can go over anything else that you want to talk about. And then so the actual facilitation of the focus groups, that was facilitated by an outside person. That was the FLPBIS project most of the time. And there was mostly a district staff in the room at all times. For Hernando, it was mostly Cynthia, so she wasn't the school-based administrator. We did ask as part of this process for parents, do you want district and school staff in the room? And they got to pick. And that was something we also had to go over with the district and school staff ahead of time. You may be asked to leave, and be respectful about that and know that they're just wanting to talk openly. 100% of the time, I think parents were like, we want you in the room. We would like you to hear our voice. We want to share our input with you. Don't leave. There were some instances where the administrators chose not to come at all, just to kind of take the pressure off so that they can talk freely. Most of the time we recorded it with video camera, so that was available as well. There were some parents who didn't want to be in the camera, so we kind of had to move that around. Making sure that you have adequate numbers. You don't want a ton of people. Not everyone's voice will be heard in that situation, but for the focus group where that mother came, I didn't do a typical protocol. And we do have a focus group protocol, if you would like. So each time we kind of set up our ground rules for the group. We went over expectations for the discussion. So we're going to be polite, respectful. Everyone's voices are going to be valued. At times, it got a little back and forth between the parents. And that's where the moderation is important, to make sure that you're facilitating it in a positive way, redirecting if necessary. Making sure parents were clear about the purpose, and that if school and district staff were in the room, that they were clear that this was a time to listen to parents and not a time to respond to what the parents were saying in that moment. That had happened a few times, where administrators or district staff, understandably so, felt like they were hearing a problem and they wanted to explain or justify or give their side. So we kind of had to remind them that we can leave time. I'm happy to stick around after the group, and I can facilitate a small group discussion at that time, but now is the time dedicated to parents. We asked a very small group of open-ended questions. We generally started with this map showing, it's outdated now, but it shows that Florida is ranked #1 in the nation for suspensions for black males and white males. So we shared this for a few reasons. It gave the families the perspective that this isn't something happening just in this school or just in this community. But Florida is really bad, and we need to fix it, and we need to fix it quick. Some of the schools shared their local data. Some didn't. Just kind of depended on what the team decided. And then so we asked them, how does this experience fit with your experience in schools? How does this resonate with you? What are your thoughts about it? What do you think is causing it? And what are your ideas for improving it? And a lot of times when you just naturally, when you show something that's problematic, people start to generate. So it didn't always flow in that order, but we tried to cover all three of those. Making sure that you're thanking families. And that was something that I think I saw a lot, was that was an opportunity for the school and district staff to repair broken relationships, to solve some of those problems and miscommunications that had come up over discipline. I had an administrator hear a parent say, I just want someone to tell me. You know, I had to log into the district website, and I had found out that my child was in ISS for 3 days. And that's how I found out. And an administrator that was sitting I think he was standing behind me, off to the side to me, he left. And later I found out he had put a kid in ISS that day and hadn't called the parent yet. So he went and called the parent. So a lot of those things kind of happened, where it was really powerful for, I think, the staff to hear directly from families, just talk to us, communicate with us, let us know early. And that also got a lot of issues with communication. We were able to address those, so things like phone numbers, right? So that's what we hear a lot. We don't know how to contact families, or when we do, they aren't responsive. So when it came to how to fix it, we would share some of those. Well, the school staff, because a lot of times we did the staff share out first, would say, parents aren't responsive. I try to reach out to them, but I don't hear back from them, or whatever. So I shared some of those concerns on behalf of them to get the family's perspective, so that it's facilitating that two-way dialogue to address the issues. So we took those transcripts from the students, the staff, and the families, and what we did to save the school staff time, because in these trainings, you know, time is of the essence, we generally tried to code them under the care domains ahead of time for them. So if there were comments like, we just want school staff to share with us what's going on, let me know. You know, that was coded under communication, which generally fell under relationships. So we kind of did those quick codings. We gave the transcripts back to the school teams and let them review, make changes to those codes if they were like, no, that actually fits under our discipline policy a little bit more. So they could kind of make adjustments as needed. And what we did was we had the care domain on the slide and let them highlight. They moved the codes. I think we actually put the codes in the columns for them, and then they just highlighted. This is a comment from relationships. And just visually looking and being able to see, it's all purple. Was an easy way for them to kind of narrow down where they were going to focus and how they were going to address it. So once they came up with their general, we're going to work on addressing relationships, then they got to go back to those codes that were coded purple and dig that deeper. You know, what is it about relationships? What are people saying isn't working? I would say that these focus groups were the most powerful activity that created quick change and perspective, a different perspective from our school staff. Do you want to share about Mary? I'm so sorry. Can we edit that? Principal's reaction, or do you want me to? We were doing this administrator who I adore, but she doesn't have a poker face, and neither do I. And so we were in the middle of the training, and she just had this look of not happiness on her face. And I asked her, I said, you know, what's going on? Talk to me, what's wrong? And she said, I just can't believe how negative my staff are compared to my families and my students. But had they not done that process, where did they always focus? Where is the problem? Families and students. So it was a quick way for them to kind of see, we do need to think about shifting focus to the staff and working and doing some PD with them on relationship building and some work there. So that was a powerful, powerful tool, and I think that's our biggest takeaway. And the lack of understanding versus a lack of buy-in. So you might, if you're facilitating this process or trying to move through this process with your colleagues, you might see it as a lack of understanding, but you know, work on the buy-in at the same time with them for the value of it. This was a way that we did staff input sessions, which I just wanted to share because it was a nice tool to have. Talking about race in a school building, I think is very new, and it's not comfortable. It's not easy. People aren't sure how to go about that. So this is called a Poll Everywhere, polleverywhere.com. And it's a way for people to engage in a large group discussion without, it's anonymous. So what you do is, I log in, set it up, and you can respond through your phone, through your tablet. We had computers set up at the tables, and staff would come in, and we'd share the data with them, and we'd ask them, well, at first, what's your reaction to this problem? Why do you think it's happening? How do you think we can fix it? This was afterwards. So how was it how were the focus groups after they had kind of gone through that once? I would say most of them did a second round. But you can see some of the comments. It was sobering but necessary. It's often a tough conversation, but it was handled extremely well. So you see a lot of the comments that were surprise reaction on part of the educators that, oh, it wasn't that bad. I was nervous to see the parent responses. However, the responses were very positive. So I highlighted those because those were the general themes across all of them. And making sure you continue to thank people, staff, students, families, for going through this whole process was really important. It's uncomfortable for everybody, but if we avoid it, then it's never going to get solved. So constantly making sure you're acknowledging that and appreciating the people doing the work. Like amazing Cynthia Jackson. So I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Well, good morning. Can everyone hear me? Okay, I am Cynthia Jackson. I am the school social worker for Hernando County Schools. I've been in Hernando County Schools for 21 years as a school social worker. What I would like to do is share our experience as to what USF came in and explained about the process. It's very personal to me, and as I go along, I'll kind of share why. So in order for you to really get a true picture about the process and how challenging it was for our district, I need to explain the demographics and the history. So let's look at the demographics. In Hernando County Schools, first of all, our county seat is located in Brooksville, Florida. I'll tell you a little more about Brooksville in just a moment. But our school system, we have 10 elementaries, 3 K-8s, we have 4 middle schools, 5 high schools, and 2 alternative education schools. Our racial demographics for our county, 63% Caucasian, 20% Hispanic, and 7.5% African American. Now that's for Hernando County Schools. I want to share with you, before I even go into that, the statistics of staff, and then you're going to see why there is a concern, and that's something that we're addressing at this time. So we have 1,766 African American students. That's 7% of the total number that I shared on the previous slide. But when we come to looking at staff, district level administrators, we had 1. She's no longer there. Principals for the entire district, 1. Assistant principals, we're excited about, we have 6 now. We're moving up. Teachers, we have 54. But when you look at the percent, it's only 3% compared to the 7% of students that we have. And then guidance, we have 2 guidance counselors that are African American, and that's 2%. Do you see how the numbers are off? And sometimes if we don't actually look at it in front of you on paper, it doesn't really speak to you. All right, so I explained that Hernando County seat is located in Brooksville, Florida. Brooksville, Florida has a long history of inequity. First of all, let's look at the name Brooksville, Florida. There was a name change in 1856. Prior to that, we were Pierceville, Florida. At that time, we had a congressman to come to Brooksville to talk about abolishing slavery. It was Congressman Sumner, Charles Sumner. He was so passionate about it and wanted to move forward. However, there was another congressman that was in his presence that was totally against it and wanted to continue slavery. That was Congressman Brooks. The city was so excited about what Senator Brooks stood for. He was so angry that he took his cane and literally beat Congressman Sumner almost to death. They didn't stop until a gang of people came to stop him from beating him. But the crowd was so excited, they moved to name the city after him. So now that's how we got Brooksville, Florida, okay? And that is something that's documented in Wikipedia if you actually Google Brooksville, Florida. Brooksville, Florida, at one point in the late 20th centuries, was stated per capita the highest rate. There was a study for lynching. That was the area, the highest rate of violence in the United States. We're talking about a little city. In fact, they still have, now it's not documented, but it is spoken, the famous lynching tree. Go there, that's actually documented. Do you get where I'm going with this? Sometimes in order to understand why there is an issue, you have to look at the history of things. All right, in 1948, Brooksville came up with the neighborhood zoning law, okay, as far as students attending school. And although it was declared in 1954 that we were not supposed to be segregated anymore, it wasn't until 1969 that this actually came to place here in Brooksville, Florida. So, although something is stated federally, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to change locally. Some of the same families that were around years ago, those names still exist, okay? So there are stories that others are sharing, imagine, parents. And so sometimes I had to look at this, they don't know any better. They only know what they've been taught. They only know what they've heard. So do I get angry because of what they heard, the ignorance? Mm-mm. I was born and raised in Brooksville, Florida. I want to see that I can make a difference. We got to move forward. I can't worry about what took place in the past, but how are we going to move forward? So, 1969 speaks volumes to me because my two oldest brothers were the first students to graduate from Hernando High Schools, the first two African Americans that actually graduated from Hernando High School, and for them, that's huge. Now, if I go to my oldest brother and I speak to him, he wants nothing to do with the topic of race because it was painful for him. That's not anything that I need to explain to others. Just be grateful you're getting an education, keep your mouth closed. I'm adding that nugget in there so you can understand when I talk about the family, who you're choosing, the different mindsets. Okay, but then there are signs of unification. And when I say signs of unification, in 1988, I recall being a part of something I always heard about, but never experienced. When I go back and I explain about the inequity and the things that was actually experienced, I recall receiving a call from the Grand Master of the Klan. They were upset because something had previously taken place. Brooksville, Florida was an area where rallies were actually taking place. Now you think we're talking about years ago, but just 1988, that wasn't too far ago. In fact, it was a year before I graduated from high school. There was a rally that wasn't taking place. We had a new chief in town who was not having it. He says, what can I do? Who can I get to help bridge our community together to drown this out? Well, my youngest brother had actually gone through the school system here in Brooksville, Florida, and he did well athletically. He was actually, after graduating, he went to the University of Miami. He did well there. Then he went into the NFL, and he did well. He played for the Philadelphia Eagles. So he's like, perhaps I can get him. So, of course, my brother comes back to town, and he says, listen, I'm going to get all of my friends that I went to high school with, both white and black. I'm going to go over into this community, and I'm going to get them. We're going to band together. Listen, guys, let them say what they want to say. We know what we stand for in Brooksville. We're not having that anymore. All we have to do is drown them out with the music. Chose music that was of that both sides could relate to. It didn't even matter. The whole thing was we're coming together in unity. So I still, in fact, I was just posting not too long ago, have a photo of him holding up a big sign, KKK, go away. And that has become a moment that's etched in my mind. So if you look, I began to think back to the work and what was instilled in me. Yes, this may have happened, but you're here for a purpose. How can you make a change? I can get bitter or I can get better. So knowing that and painting this history, talking about signs of unification, shortly thereafter, my brother was killed tragically in a car accident in 1992. But the city was so grateful for how we were beginning to pull things together that a community center was built and named after him in 2000. So one of the things that I would say that we currently take pride in, yes, things still happen. Just 2 years ago, let me go back. In 2010, there were a group of people that came together and said, you know, it's shameful that we have this history of the name change on our city's website, still praising the Senator Brooks for what he actually did. How embarrassing is that? We want to change the name again. Of course, the city council didn't pay attention to that, wouldn't even entertain it. However, they did decide to take that blurb of the history off of the city's website because that was something that, you know, it was considered shameful and how are we going to do? However, you still had some that would honor that. Maybe not spoken, but heartfelt. So now you have an idea of what it is that, you know, we're somewhat up against. All right, so that's the history of Hernando County, Brooksville, Florida, ladies and gentlemen. But however, we are moving forward. I want to make that very clear. It's not just some of the African Americans that's saying we got to move forward. We have Caucasians, we have Hispanics. What can we do to band together? All right, so this is very, very key when we're looking at planning for our family and student focus groups. The first thing is the selection of students. As a staff member, whether you're a principal or a vice principal or a teacher, and you're trying to say, who are we going to use for students? It's usually easy to get the students that's doing well academically, is it not? It's usually easy to pick the most respectful child that's quiet. Maybe they're not doing well academically, but you know, they're always doing great things. They're dressed cute. Their mom comes in and they bring cookies, or they don't, it's okay, I like them. But what about the ones that are loud? What about the ones that come across disrespectful? Do you not want them? What about the ones that's constantly being suspended from school? Or someone that's been pregnant? The one that doesn't necessarily fit our mold of the perfect student, the ideal student. If you really want to hear what's going on, you need to get the good, bad, and the ugly. The good, bad, and the ugly. Because what we're trying to do is deal with reality and see, how can I make a change? But if I can't continue to choose students that look like me, that act like me, then guess what? I'm still going to get the same results of what I have. I'm not going to know the truth. Selection of families. Okay, this mom, she's always involved with PTA. This dad is always helping out with the sports department. Is that what we want? We need to reach out. Get those parents that don't seem like they're coming. Get the one who we think was just released from prison, or get the one that we think is the reason they don't come around because they're on drugs. No, we want to hear it all. because sometimes they have a different perspective. They can share some things, and the assumption that you made about them, that they're not coming, it could be because they have a medical issue. It could be because they have to work 2 jobs to make sure that their child have whatever it is that they need. So when you're selecting these families, again, be mindful, be creative, go beyond the normal scope of what it is that you see. The method of contacting families. Devon explained earlier, your phone call. Sometimes if it's necessary, you say, you know what, Cynthia, I don't feel comfortable. I don't know what to say to these people. Find someone. Let's go back. This is something that I have a passion for, okay? As a social worker, that's my thing, bridging the gap between families and schools. Let's talk about what a Cynthia may look like. Now, does Cynthia have to be African American to be successful? No. It's a perk. It helps, you know, it really helps. Why does it help? Because these families that they're talking to is someone, she looks like me, skin-wise. Now, granted, you're gonna have some, I mean, I've been on both sides of the road. I've been told, well, they like you because of your family. It's who you know. Oh, they like you because, you know, you talk white. No, I talk green. I speak so that whenever I'm in an individual, in a place, it's about me getting money. So you can call it what you want. I have children to feed. I have bills just like you do. But again, it's not about that. Find someone that the community, that the students, the families think that they care about them. Sometimes they don't want to know how much you know until they know how much you care. So because I'm someone that has made it out of the community, okay, and I've gone away, but are you coming back? What are you instilling? So again, when the chief saw that there was an issue with the Klan rally, he didn't choose my brother because, okay, he was famous, you know, he made it to the league. It was deeper than that. He's friends with both, with families from both sides of the track. How many of you hear that term? Both sides of the track. Because that's the reality of it. You need to find someone that can give you the ugly truth, that can speak something, and it's okay. Could you imagine if I said to you, ma'am, your face, something's on your face. So you're looking at your lips thinking something is on your lips, when actually you have a booger right here on the side of your head. Now, if I continue to act like it has to do with your lips, guess what? That booger will stay right there, and everybody else will be looking at it. It'll be ugly, they'll be making faces, but we won't address the issue. So, again, find someone that the community respects, that they care about, and someone that can speak the ugly truth. In my district, I explained that there is there's one black principal. Her and I are very good friends, but there are some things that I can say that she can't say. One of the things that came in when USF came in, they said, you know what, this is the issue. Disproportionality is to African American students. They have to realize that they're suspended at a higher rate or they receive a discipline at a higher rate than their counterparts. So we need to put a program in place to help this. She knows it's true, but Cynthia, I can't say that to them. I'm black. It's gonna make my staff think that all I care about is black students. I said, but it's an issue, and if we don't address it, it's gonna continue to be an issue. You can say that, I can't, because I'm in a district where, and so those were her feelings, but she was willing to find another loophole, another way to address it. So sometimes, maybe you're not comfortable. Maybe you're not comfortable telling someone, again, the ugly truth, but you have someone on your team that does. Utilize them. Have them go out. Find out what makes your students tick. Find out what makes these families tick. Okay? So that you can always pull it together. It may just be another minister in the community. Maybe you don't have, so what? Maybe you don't have anyone that's African American on your staff at your particular school or on the district level. Maybe there's a pastor that's in your community. No, he doesn't have a bachelor's degree, but he has a heart for the people. The people respect him. The people will listen to him. All you have to do is spend some time. Listen, this is what I want to address. This is what I need from you. How can we make this happen? Again, someone that cares. Doesn't have to have a title. Doesn't have to dress a certain way. Doesn't have to look a certain way. Doesn't have to smell a certain way. They just got to have the right heart and the passion to want to see that both, not only our students, not only our families, but our schools succeed as well, okay? So, conversation upon contacting students. What is it that you're saying to the students? It's not gonna go over well if you have someone that's contacting the students that's afraid to say blacks. Everybody say black with me. Say black. Mm-hmm. African American. Say African American. Okay, you're in there. You're in there. You can say it, but you can't be afraid to address the issue. Again, be explicit. You have to actually say, listen, there's a problem in the school system. I know you know it, we know it, but I want to hear what you have to say. How do you feel? But if I go in again, if I'm afraid to actually say what it is that I really want, then they may think they're coming for another reason. Reassure them. Your voice will be heard, but it doesn't necessarily have to be shared with your name. Okay? Well, if I say this and I'm really talking about Ms. Thomas, then everyone's going to get upset. Or it could come back to bite me. Excuse me. Conversations upon contacting the family. Say the same thing. Say what it is, but you need to reassure them that while your voice is going to be heard, no one has to really identify you. You don't have to be afraid. I had some families that wanted that reassurance. I know what you're saying, but will they do this? Will they take away from, as what's going to happen? So next time, I would invite families in person. If I had to do it all over again, I would invite families in person. I would go to their home so that they can see, sometimes, whether it's through a text or whether it's phone call, I can say okay, but you don't know if I'm saying okay. Okay. You really don't know. So follow up, person to person, because you really want them to be there. As she says, how can I help you come? You need me to stop by and pick you up? I got you. I can send the attendance person out there. You're just getting off work? You're not going to have enough time to cook? Don't worry about it. We're going to have some healthy snacks there for you. Hold you over till you get back home, okay? Also, include families, again, that appear to be more challenging or vocal. That was one of the struggles at one of my schools because we don't want her because she always come in here and, she's loud and she says she's going to call the news or, she's that, Black Lives Matter parent. And that's offensive to you. Why? Let's look at that. Let's look at that. What has she experienced to make her feel that way? Let's not just judge a thing. Let's look at the why. All right, we're going to move right along. Once you have them at the focus group, developing a rapport, as I was saying, with the student and family, that's very important. You have to develop that rapport. You have to talk to them. Maybe you aren't comfortable with their dialect or what's said. I don't know, she comes across ghetto. Are you serious? Find out. Take the time to listen. And not just listen with your ears, listen with your heart. Find out what it is that's being said. At the at the actual time that we're going to get together, set the tone. Explain. Here are some ground rules. Like she says, the Vegas rule. Whatever we talk about stays here. Now, I'm going to document this because the staff need to know. Are you okay with that? Now, if you don't want to use your name, you can be Joe Blow. But at the end of the day, we need to know. Some were okay with it, some rather not. But it's no pressure. We're still trying to get the important information. Setting the environment. Small room, intimate, not in a place where people are walking by trying to figure out, why are they here today? What are they in here for? You don't want them to feel intimidated. Again, ask if you want the staff there. Ask if you need them to actually step out, whatever it's needed. Let's go to the next slide. All right, results. What was revealed? It was true to us to find out that there are some poor relationship building skills. We need to work on that. Find out. Pair it up with someone else that maybe has no problems going and talking or calling. Never mind the excuses. I know you don't feel comfortable. We're going to do it. We're going to do it enough till we get used to it, okay? It also opened the eyes of those with unconscious bias. Are you trying to imply that I'm racist? No. There are some issues, some experiences that maybe you haven't had. So let's look at that. How are we going to deal with this? Students felt singled out but unable to speak their truths. A lot of the students would say, well, I just felt like, they were picking on me. And then on the other hand, you have the other students say, well, they pick on you because of how you behave. So it's not always that you're going to receive negative comments, positive. Hey, if I get a discipline, I want the dean to know exactly what I did, how I felt, and what it really meant to me, because while she thought I was being disrespectful, she doesn't know. I had my head down because last night I heard gunshots. I didn't even get a chance to have a meal last night, So they're writing me up, but no one is hearing my story. No one's hearing my truth, okay? There are cultural differences. You're different, I'm different. Both of us can be African American, and we're still different. But whatever it is, let's work through those differences. Disrespect. I may have been taught, you don't look, when someone's speaking to you, keep your head down. You don't look, you don't make eye contact. That doesn't mean that you look at me, young lady. Well, dog, my mama taught me if I look at you, then I'm being disrespectful. So find out what it is, that disrespect. There are differences, but it's okay. It's okay to be different. Let's just work through it. New process. As far as writing up disciplines, one of the things we took from this, we got to hear their voice. So teachers no longer write up disciplines for level 1, classroom disruption, disrespectful. Not like that. What do you have to do before you can actually write them up and send it to the dean or send it to the office to be processed? Teachers must complete 3 interventions prior to making discipline referrals. So there's an issue, you got to have an after-class conversation with the student, not during academic time. You can't count it because I went over there and talked to them face-to-face. No. When we're not in the class, one-on-one, let's talk. Second thing, contact and document conversation with the parent. Not, I spoke to him a minute ago, guess what, I'm writing your kid up and it's over. No, is there anything that you can do to help me with this kid? I really want to know. You're the mom, you know the child better than me. I need help, okay? Assign lunch detention. Find something small that you can handle. 1, this is going to force the teachers to do what? Build relationship with the student and the family. 2, the authority that the teacher has, it stays right there. You're not giving it away to administration to deal with. Students, they have voices. They have voices. And sometimes it's not going to be about, well, you're picking on me, but there's a part B. Yes, I could have done this different. I could have done this different. Had you just asked me, had you just said it in a way that showed me that you really was caring, you were caring about me, maybe I would have responded different. Okay. Are there any questions? Yes, right here.
So I have a question kind of related to that scenario that was just brought up. As part of your work, are you working with the teachers at all to teach neutralizing routines? Or other strategies to kind of check their own implicit biases?
Now you mean her or myself?
Either.
Oh, you actually are. She's going to give you a really good example in a minute. But from our perspective, that example for this specific school is still a work in process and getting that in place. So change takes time. It was heard. I think it was valued by the team. It's not on the form yet. But so those things are an ongoing process. We're still working with those principals. So, but she has. Are you going to share the one from you?
Mm-hmm. So when we were working with staff and they were getting their response to, what it is that they were seeing, we got some crazy responses. What could you do? Or, well, if it seemed like the white kids acting good, maybe they could, they can teach the black. It was just like, wait. But then I had one young lady who wasn't really saying much, and she wasn't young. She was older. She was well seasoned. The look on her face. And when we took a break, can I see you? And she began to tear up. That's me. I don't do well. I don't need my administrators to know that I come from a racist family. I said, you know what? It's okay. Because I feel like this, so what, you're racist, but if I can give you one experience, one good interaction to help you realize that not all black students, black staff, people, whatever it is, really fits the mold that's already been shaped in your mind, media or families or whatever. If I can make that one experience happen and perhaps change your whole view, then I'm willing to be that sacrifice. So, no, I don't have to go tell the staff. I don't have to go let the administrators know. But I want you to know that I'm here. Please call me. Please, I'll sit through a phone call with you. No, I don't need to make the phone call for you, but I'm willing to sit with you and let's talk about this. So you'll have those instances, but you have to find someone that's willing to, again, speak the ugly truth.
In the moment, I don't know if you want to go into detail, but she gave an example of a teacher giving a direction, and she said, me being Cynthia as a black woman, I might, as a black student, I might respond like this, and then she pointed at me. So Devon, white girl over here, she might respond like this.
Correct. So typical. Mm-hmm. So, for example, that's Susie, and this is Shanika, okay? So, neither one of them are doing what they need to do. They're not following instructions. An assignment was given. So, we say, ladies, I need you to get to work. Susie, keep looking in her mirror, doing whatever she wants. Didn't say a word. Shanika, I need you to get to work. Now, she feels like she's already completed her work. You know, she's just saying whatever, but she's being expressive. Now, is Shanika more at wrong than Susie? Is she? The instructions was to get to work. Neither one of them did what you said to do, but you see more of Shanika's because she uses her hands, the gestures, she's rolling her neck, all that. And that's not something that a teacher is comfortable with. I don't, in her mind, I don't know if she's gonna jump up at me and slap me, cuss me, what's next? No, find out what, that makes me uncomfortable. Can you do something else? Can we? But again, she would write up Shanika real quick, fast, in a hurry. But Susie, she was just moving her hair, it's okay. It's little things like that.
And in that moment, that was a staff share. In that moment, the teacher said, I do write those. I would have written that up.
Right.
And that's when she was able to get a one-on-one, like, quick PD session on, and
Yeah.
they're going to delve deeper into this respect. But that's why she's so important for this process, because she can say things in a way that I think don't offend people. But
Well, I try not to. Yes, is there another question?
So yeah, my computer crashed, so I'm not exactly sure what slide, but in your slides, I thought I saw that there was, when during your focus group or conversations with families, that issues were brought up, like disrespect, like the example that you just brought up, that there might be office discipline referrals for disrespectful behavior, right? And that when parents were involved, then the solutions and the strategies look very different.
Absolutely.
Talk a little bit about that.
So, I want to think about the one parent who said, no one told me. All you had to do was call me. All you had to do was tell me. Had I known, I could have done something about it. In fact, there was a student, the teacher decided to contact the coach because felt like she could get some discipline. She could make a difference. But what ended up happening, the kid ended up getting kicked off the team. And the mom always used that to help motivate the kid. She didn't need that. Her thing was, why didn't you call me? I could have nipped it in the bud. Put me on the phone. So the intervention is different. And sometimes parents will say to the teacher, hey, I'm on your side. I want my kid to do well, as well. You just have to communicate with me. So yes, it does look different in the end. Now you have some of the mamas that might, use some colorful words, cuss you out, but you have to come back at a different way. Ma'am, I hear your anger out. I understand. But at the end of the day, we're on the same side. We want him to be successful. Again, it's all about the dialogue. It's all about building a rapport. I'm not sure if I answered your question. Thank you so much for attending. And I'm so excited that you're going to make a difference in your district when you return. Have a great day.